Imagine a war where the enemy has no guns, no strategy, and no orders. Only feathers, long legs, and a relentless appetite for destruction. Welcome to the Australian Emu War of 1932, where soldiers armed with machine guns faced off against 20,000 determined birds, and lost. Following World War I, many veterans who served in the war were given land that was intended to be used for farming. These areas weren't the best for farming, and the Great Depression didn't help the ex-soldiers to make a profit either. Farmers were expected to produce wheat, encouraged by a payment from the government that would never actually come. This caused a large outburst from the farmers and a near refusal for them to give up their wheat to the government. This would not be the end of their troubles though, because Western Australia was then met with the arrival of 20,000 emus. The emus had migrated after their breeding seasons, going towards the coastal areas, which is where the farmers were unfortunately located. I say unfortunately because the emus took a liking to the climate, with having plenty of cleared land and bountiful amounts of fresh water. As the emus made their way into the farmlands, they discovered the crops of the wheat farmers, consuming their wheat and leaving holes in the fences which allowed other creatures to get in. This led to a major loss of crops and even more economic hardship for the farmers. The farmers were furious and needed to do something about it before it was too late. The farmers made their way to Sir George Pearce, the Australian Minister of Defence. Being ex-soldiers, the farmers approached Pearce with their knowledge regarding the military's machine guns, requesting the authorization to use them. Pearce agreed, on the terms that the guns would only be used by current military members, transportation of the troops would be financed by the Western Australian government, and that the farmers would provide payment and accommodations in exchange for the ammunition. It is rumored that Pearce agreed on the grounds that the emus would make good target practice as well. The involvement of the military in this conflict was now set to begin in October of 1932. Major Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery's 7th Regiment headed the war, alongside 2 soldiers, Sergeant McMurray and Gunner O'Halloran, who were armed with 2 machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. The troops were deployed on November 2, 1932, with the goal of retrieving 100 emu skins, which would be used to make hats for other members of the military. Setting out in Campion, Australia, with information on the location of 50 emus, the soldiers sighted the group. Attempting to herd them into a place where it would be easier to attack, the emus broke off into smaller groups and were able to escape the soldiers. Later that day, however, they spotted and were able to kill several of the birds. 2 days later, Meredith had prepared an ambush near a dam where the emus found their water. This plan worked, as the soldiers observed upwards of 1,000 emus coming their way. They commenced fire, but the gun jammed after killing only 12 of the birds. The misfortunes of this group of soldiers would only continue, with Meredith trying multiple methods to take down the emus, such as mounting a machine gun onto a truck, which proved ineffective. Over the next couple of days, interactions and one-way firefights continued, and by the 8th of November, 2,500 of the 10,000 original rounds had been fired. The amount of emu casualties from these attacks are unsure, with sources ranging from 50 all the way to 500 fatalities. Even if they had killed 500 of the birds, with there being 20,000 of them at the start, they didn't really put too much of a dent in the population. With this information being rallied back to the Australian House of Representatives, the operation was discussed and ultimately abandoned. Pearce recalled the soldiers, guns, and ammunition on the 8th of November. An official report from the base commander indicated that 300 emus were killed in this operation. Oh, you thought they were finished? Unfortunately, that's not the case for this story. The emus hadn't been stopped by the original strike, continuing those same devastating attacks on the farmers' crops, and within only 4 days, the farmers had made their way to James Mitchell, the Premier of Western Australia, who supported their cause and argued for their case in the Senate. Upon the Senate's approval, the renewed campaign began on November 13, 1932, under the same leadership of Major Meredith. This time, the military forces aimed to rectify the mistakes of the first attempt and adopt more strategic approaches to combat the emus. Despite their renewed determination, the emus had not become any less cunning. The second attempt saw the soldiers returning to the wheat fields, equipped once again with their machine guns and ample ammunition. Meredith and his men sought to apply lessons learned from their initial foray, opting for ambush tactics and more mobile operations. However, the emus continued to prove themselves to be formidable opponents. These large, flightless birds displayed remarkable evasion tactics, often scattering and running at speeds that made accurate targeting nearly impossible. Even when the soldiers managed to get close enough for a clear shot, the emu's erratic movements rendered many of the machine gun bursts ineffective. Despite these ongoing challenges, the military continued their efforts for nearly a month. During this period, sporadic engagements with emu flocks resulted in minor successes, but no significant reduction in the overall population. Reports from the field indicated that while a few hundred emus may have been killed, it was nowhere near the number needed to alleviate the pressure on the farmers' crops. By December 10, 1932, the military had fired approximately 9,860 rounds of ammunition. Official estimates suggested that around 1,000 emus had been killed during the second campaign, a far cry from the intended eradication. In light of the limited success and the continued economic strain, the government decided to withdraw the military forces once more, effectively ending what would later be dubbed the Emu War. The aftermath of the Emu War left a bitter taste for many involved. The farmers were still left to contend with the persistent threat to their crops, while the military faced embarrassment over their inability to defeat a flock of birds. The event became a source of both frustration and amusement, encapsulating the difficulties of managing wildlife in rural Australia. In the years that followed, the Australian government sought alternative methods to address the emu problem. Bounties were placed on emu heads, encouraging local hunters to take up the cause. Additionally, the construction of exclusion barrier fencing helped to mitigate the impact of emus on farmland. Despite these efforts, the Emu War remains a unique and somewhat humorous episode in Australian history, demonstrating the unexpected challenges that can arise from human-wildlife conflict. Thank you all so much for watching today's video. I really hope that you enjoyed. Leave any recommendations on future documentaries that you might want me to do in the comments, and I will definitely get back to you. Thanks so much and have a great day. Peace.